All right, welcome everybody to our May exhibition night. I'm going to get things started by turning it over to our judge coordinator, Stuart Wilson, to introduce our three judges for tonight. Stuart?
Thanks, Bill, and hi, everybody. So our three judges tonight, the first one I'd like to introduce is Krista Dix. Krista, could you just say hi, just so your picture lights up on the screen?
Sure.
There you go.
Here.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for being our judge tonight.
Absolutely.
Krista is the executive director of the Griffin Museum of Photography in Winchester, Massachusetts. Last time Krista judged for us was in 2020, I believe, 2020. Yeah, 2020. And then she was associate director. Now she's executive director. So congratulations.
Thank you.
The Griffin Museum of Photography is a nonprofit organization dedicated solely to the art of photography. Through many exhibitions, programs, and lectures, they strive to encourage a broader understanding and appreciation of the visual, emotional, and social impact of photographic art. The main museum complex and its multiple satellite galleries throughout Boston showcase and support photographic artists from around the world to educate and to inspire. Prior to moving to Boston to work with Griffin, Krista was the founder and director of Wallspace Creative, based in Santa Barbara. The gallery had a 15-year history of showcasing and supporting emerging and mid-career photographic artists. So Krista, thanks again very much for being our judge.
Thanks for having me.
And especially in that time zone back there,
yeah, I had my coffee, so I'm good. I'm ready to go.
All right, thank you. And our other remote judge tonight, again, out of the area, Alex Nye. Alex, could you just say hi?
Hey, everybody.
There he is. Hi, Alex.
It's been a little while, at least a year.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, Alex last judged for us in 2020 also. Wow. Alex is an award-winning fine art and architectural photographer, originally from upstate New York. He received a 4-year visual arts degree from State University of New York, New Paltz in 2013. He moved to Santa Barbara. In 2013, he moved to Santa Barbara for 6 years and now lives in San Diego while working throughout California. He's won dozens of awards for his photography in national and international competitions. He has exhibited work in galleries around the country and has sold hundreds of prints to corporate offices, museums, and private collectors. He's a commercial photographer commissioned by clients primarily in the architectural industry. And he's also a licensed drone pilot and owns a video production company called Priz Media, LLC. So thanks again, Alex, for being our judge.
Happy to be back. This is going to be exciting.
Great. And our club judge tonight is Patty Gutschall. Patty,
hi, everybody. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, Patty.
Patty began studying photography under the direction of Everett Weinreb at the Photographic Institute of Santa Barbara, working with 4x5 film and the wet darkroom. After developing an allergy to the chemicals, she turned to the digital darkroom. And following that, she has won a number of contests, including 3 images on permanent display at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital and 24 photos in the new Goleta Valley Cottage Hospital. We all know that her favorite word is fun, and she loves taking pictures everywhere she goes. They may not be the perfect exposure or the sharpest and may not win an award, but they are priceless in her mind. She has nevertheless won numerous Channel City awards and always excels as a club judge. And I have to add, you had a photo on exhibit on Times Square, New York,
yes.
On one of those big screens.
The big board.
So thank you, Patty, for being our judge tonight.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it back to Bill.
We are ready to roll with exhibition night. Here's our judges' names in writing if you haven't, you've been introduced, but this is who they are. And our first category is creative conceptual editing. We are ready to go. The first image is called Bird of Paradise, and the critique is from Krista Dix.
Okay, so my understanding about this category is it's composited or altered in some way. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't see obvious editing on this. I'm not sure. It's an interesting image. I do like the halo, but I'm not sure if it hits the category. I would love to talk to the artist to see what their intent was for this particular image.
Okay, thank you. Bird of Paradise scored 18.
Next image is Chihuly Abstract. Alex, this is yours to critique.
Okay. So these objects in this photo look familiar to me when I first saw it. I think I've seen them before. They're like a glass sculpture. I feel like I've seen it in Arizona. That I may have been to this same exact park, if I can see correctly. But I've also always been intrigued by these sculptures, but I've never really been able to know how to capture them. And I feel like it's a difficult thing to capture because the subject itself is already so chaotic and, you know, kind of wild with all these little strings going in every direction, that I feel like layering them together might be going a little too far. And it becomes a little bit too busy for my particular taste in this scenario. So, you know, one idea that came to mind, and, you know, I don't want to get too involved on every photo. I'll try to keep my responses brief, but, you know, just one suggestion would be maybe combining that element with another photo that could kind of support what's happening. So, for example, going crazy with the compositing concept, you know, put this big bushy glass sculpture on like a person or a doll's head, you know, so it could look like an extension of their hair or something, just kind of making an interesting commentary about like where one piece of art or one object could be displaced with something else and create a new meaning. To me, this composition is just a little too chaotic. It's just too many things happening at once, but I'm also fascinated by these, and I think there's a lot of interesting directions you could go with it.
All right, thank you. Chihuly Abstraction scored 17.
Next is Dreaming, and this is critiqued by Patty Gutschall.
When I first saw this image, I loved it. I love the softness and the colors in the way it drops off with the glow. But because I did not feel it met the criteria of creative, I had to drop off a point for it. So I think if you had entered this in open, you would have gotten a higher score. But I like the composition, and I love the color, and I love the softness of it because you can still see the detail in the petals.
Okay, thank you. Dreaming scored 20, 2-0.
Next image is End of Day. Krista Dix, this is your critique.
I actually really like this image. There's something very mysterious about it. The glow is good. The fade in and out with the trees. There's lots of stories to be told from this image. So I thought it was a successful piece.
Okay, thank you. End of Day scored 22. That's 2-0.
The next image is Oak on Hill, critique from Alex Nye.
So this is interesting. I would never have known that this started as a photo. This to me looks just like some kind of painting, oil or watercolor, which is probably what was, you know, they were going for in this case. So with that in mind, I mean, it's a really strong piece of art. You know, the composition's good. I like the lighting. It's really lush. The colors are nice. I even like that there's like a natural or maybe unnatural, who knows, vignette that's kind of happening. It sort of looks like when you put a circular polarizer filter and you get, you know, the darkening at the blue skies at the edges. To me, that's kind of what it reminds me of. I don't know if that was done in post or if that's like in camera. I'd be curious to know the backstory of this and kind of how much it was stretched, because even the, you know, the branches look manipulated, like sort of smeared, the pixels or something, but very intriguing.
Okay, thank you. Oak on Hill scored 19.
Next image is Shades of Childhood. Patty Gutschall doing the critique.
I really like this image. I like all the detail in the footprints and the over sharpening and the shadows. I would clean up a little bit on your masking around the yellow. If you're going to mask and put colors in, you want to keep those really nice and clean and sharp. And if I were to print this, I would clean up some of the white spots in the shadows if you were going to print it and make it larger. And I kept going back and forth about whether I wanted to turn it counterclockwise once or not, because I felt a little off balance, but I just love the handprints, the colors, the way that you've applied them. And I think it's a very successful image.
Okay, thank you. Shades of Childhood scored 16.
Next image is Starry Night Adventure, Krista Dix critiquing.
I thought this was really clever. It's, pardon me, my cat has decided that it's definitely time to start playing.
Mine might do the same pretty soon.
Yeah, well, she hasn't seen me for 12 hours, so she's like, yeah, now's a good time.
Right.
But back to the image. So it reminded me of a fable, and I'm not sure what's happening in it, but I want to know everything about what's going on and why these birds are hanging out in the boat. And I need new glasses, but this boat, or the bird in the upper left, is really interesting to me. Looks super evil coming against the two other birds. So anyway, I loved it. I played with this for a long time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Starry Night Adventure scored 22.
Next image is Unity, Alex Nye doing the critique.
So definitely personal tastes on all of this. You know, art is very subjective. To me, this is a little too much. I think it's similar to my comments from the first one. It's a little overwhelming. I think both the saturation and the kind of selective use of color, where it sort of bleeds kind of somewhat randomly, it kind of feels like a mistake to me. It almost feels like to me, I feel like I'm looking at like a wet lens, like a lens that got waterlogged or something, which like maybe, you know, that could create a really cool effect, but it just, maybe it's the way I look at things, but it feels like kind of like something's in the way of the photo. Like I want to kind of see through this this droplet here to what really is behind it. The color choices I think are really interesting. I like the complementary, the red and the blue, mixed with black and white. I like selective color. I just think, you know, maybe being more intentional about how the color is used, maybe, you know, on the leaves, or just more consistent. Like I'm not really understanding the pattern of where the red and the blue kind of spills out onto the background there. But once again, would be very curious to know kind of how it came to this result, if it's a double exposure or just, you know, one that was severely manipulated or what. But
Okay.
Can I say something?
yes,
Sure.
please.
I was kind of like in your corner on it too. And my daughter was up here from LA, and I was looking at these, and she goes, no, you know, you have to look at this, you have to look at that, you know, and her younger eyes compared to mine, she saw a lot of 3D, and she was looking at it as the reflection on the lens of the camera and whatnot, and she liked it. So I just want the photographers to know that, you know, maybe I agree with Alex, but my daughter said she thought it was excellent. So I just want to let you know that.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Unity scored 15.
The next image is Welcome to the Hotel California. Patty, this is yours for critique.
I love this image. I like the way that it plays with the clouds and the building. After I looked at it a while, I thought it needs some 3D. It seemed a little bit flat. I thought, what if the clouds in the back were just like blue, solid blue sky, so that it would stand out from the sky? But I think it's done really well creatively. It's definitely meets the criteria. And I love the balance of the building at the bottom and the way that it's cropped. And so I thought it was very successful, but I just thought maybe try some solid blue sky to see if it separates a little better.
Can I
Okay,
offer a
thank-
little second opinion on that?
Please.
Sure.
So I love this, and what I loved about it was the flatness, because you didn't quite know where the beginning was and where the ending was, right? So it was this great composite idea of whether those windows would continue on or they were being harnessed in by the market. So I thought it looked, I agree with you that it could be interesting with some depth, but I really loved it as a very flat sort of image as well.
Very successful.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, welcome to Hotel California, scored 23. So for the creative edit category, we have 4 accepted images. Dreaming, Judith Barrett. End of Day, Zoltan Pushkash. Starry Night Adventure, Chris Seaton. And Welcome to Hotel California, Bill Banning.
That brings us to the nature category. And this is a traditional nature category month, No Hand of Man. And we'll move right into this with Beachcombing. And this is critiqued by Krista Dix.
So it's a lovely image, sharp. The bird is captured well. There's no tension in the image for me, so I kind of wish that there had been some sort of movement either of the bird coming into the frame or out of the frame. But as a portrait, it's a successful portrait.
All right, thank you. Beachcombing scored 18.
Next is Bison Family. Alex, yours to critique.
Okay, so I know the description says it's mostly based on, the scoring is mostly based on what's happening and the story of the photo, which is cool. But I also am a very technical photographer, so that's probably what I'll say more about, generally in most cases. But from a story perspective, really interesting. I love the scale, how you've got the smallest one leading up to the biggest one. I think that's really cute and effective compositionally. The technical things that stood out to me that I think would make this a better, more impactful image. So one was the use of depth. So right now there's not really much depth. These, the subject is right up against their background. And so it kind of becomes flat and mushed together, and it doesn't have an opportunity to kind of fall out of focus. Whereas, that's just the nature of where you happen to capture this. So a lot of times there's nothing you can do about that. But if we're talking about how to create the best possible image, doing it from a different angle where there's maybe not a hillside, there's a little more depth or distance to the background. That was one thing that stood out to me. The second thing, just on a post-processing standpoint, this looks slightly magenta to my eye. I mean, again, everything's subjective and creative license, but I would probably slide the tint a little more towards the greens, especially in the shadows. It looks like it's a little more magenta than what I would imagine reality to be. But yeah, so those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Bison Family scored 17.
Next image is Bonding by the Beach. Patty Getchell for the critique.
These bears are just absolutely wonderful. I found it a little bit over sharpened for me between the water in the background and the sand. I felt a little bit too sharp, but them by themselves, I thought they were lovely. And I would like to see the water just a little bit blurred out. If you just had a little narrower depth of field to get rid of that, the water waves right there. But I thought it was a lovely image. I like the way that they're moving, and I always like animals looking at us, but I think in this image it works well. But I would definitely just like to see that sand be not quite so sharp, so that the only thing sharp is really the bears standing out.
Okay, thank you. Bonding by the Beach scored 20. That's 2-0.
The next image is Cactus Bloom, critique from Krista Dix.
As a portrait, this is an interesting choice. I know I need new glasses. I keep saying that, but it's true. But when I look at this, it seems a little, the point of focus seems to be too narrow. And then the black seems to me to be just a tad too heavy. The edging just seems a little bit rough. I think that was a nice idea, but I just don't think the execution was 100%.
Okay, thank you. Cactus Bloom scored 15.
Next image is Kara Kara Combat, Alex Nye to critique.
So in terms of an action shot, this is amazing. Like, I love this moment. I don't know how frequently this happens, but I would imagine it's, you know, pretty tough to capture that conflict, if that's what this is, between two birds. Yeah, technically it's great. It looks like it's sharp. The shutter speed was fast enough to capture the motion without too much blur. Nailed focus, so all the technical aspects are there. I feel like the only thing to me is, like, it feels like the moment is just a little too late. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fact that, you know, the one bird is already kind of turning and it's on its way away. I imagine, like, maybe just a split second earlier, it was at the same level and they were facing each other. I feel like that could be really powerful. Still an amazing capture regardless. And maybe, you know, maybe there wasn't a better moment, but well done.
Can I say, I just love seeing the back of those wings and all those feathers. It's like I'm able to see the front of the birds, the back of the birds and their claws. I enjoy that part of it. I agree. I understand what you're saying, but I just love seeing the back of those wings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love the image and I love the line of this. My only issue is that it's dead center. I wanted a little more tension to the left or to the right. That's just me, again, falling into the frame or falling out of the frame would add a little heightened sense of urgency to the piece. And maybe that might make more sense as to Alex's concern that it was just a moment too late. If you move that just a hair one direction or the other, you feel like you're jumping into the frame and into the fray with them. But the fact that it's dead center often loses that tension.
I like that idea.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Kara Kara Combat scored 22.
Hold on. Okay, next is Cliffs with a critique by Patty Gutschall.
My eye wants to go to the first cliff. It's so sharp and has so much detail. And I want a balance with that. I feel, I like the way, whoops, sorry. I like the way it drops off as it gets, the gradation goes down, but it's not sharp enough for me. If I've got this much that my eye is focusing on that is so sharp, it's just not comfortable with this, the ocean being that out of focus. And the clouds are more in focus, so that helps. So I almost wonder if maybe if you were to crop this off, because there's not much information out here on the right in the ocean and it's not sharp. So maybe if you were to crop it off and make it a smaller image, then I think it would be a more powerful image and just using the better parts of the image. But exposure wise, I think you did a good job on there. And I'm not sure about the color of the clouds. I kind of felt they were a little bit off, could be my screen, but I thought maybe that needed to be balanced just a tiny bit, but the green looks good on the cliff. I do like that part of it.
So really fast, sorry, regarding the color of the clouds, I also noticed something similar. I mean, clearly there's like a gradient adjustment darkening them, which in most cases I actually really like. I think it's a good idea. The one thing that stood out to me, and it's hard to tell from here, but when you zoom in, on the right edge, there's like some magenta pixelation, like artifacts that's happening. So what I would do or recommend is just adding a new layer in Photoshop. And although I don't know if Photoshop's allowed in this category, but I'll say it anyways, with color blending mode, and then just use your eyedropper, you know, somewhere else in the sky, and just lightly with a low opacity kind of brush over those magenta areas. Sometimes that happens when you're, you know, stretching local adjustments a lot. It just kind of gets some artifacts, but all around, I thought this one was stunning. I love this style, and I love this location too.
Okay, thank you. Cliff scored 21.
And the next image is Day Glow, critique from Krista Dix.
So this image to me, it's great compositionally. It's interesting. I love the abstract. I love the peekaboo yellow pieces. My concern is that it just seems super pixelated and super soft on all levels. And I'm not sure that that was the intent of the photographer. I'd love to see it as a macro that has some sort of point of sharpness so that we can be drawn into the image. And maybe it's just me, but I like the idea. I'm just not 100% on the execution.
Okay, thank you. Dayglow scored 16.
Next is Golden Eyed Leaf Frog, Alex Nye critiquing.
Yeah, so this is a banger. This is one of only 2 or 3 that I scored 9s on. Although this brought up an interesting point for me, which maybe could be a suggestion for the future with the club, which is I would love it if all the images were full resolution. I feel like for me, I'm a pixel peeper, and that's how I like truly critique an image. And nailed focus. So small suggestion, maybe that can be implemented in the future, but so that might make a small difference. Like if that eye, for example, wasn't like totally perfectly in focus, then maybe it's not a perfect score. But yeah. So anyway, this is an excellent capture. Why does it work? I think a lot of reasons. The subject, for one, it's a really cool creature. That eye is really fascinating. The texture on it, that's also why I want to zoom in on it. The lighting is fabulous. So it's like nice, soft. It almost looks like it's in a studio, which is possible, but I'd be surprised. Just how soft and natural the lighting looks. The diagonal, so how the frog itself is kind of supported. It's going from corner to corner, lower left to upper right, and it's supported by this leaf that it's sitting on. It kind of mirrors that same motion, that same angle. It's got so much speed to it. To me, it feels like this, it feels almost like a sexy car commercial ad. Like it's a great capture. But yeah, I'll stop there. I'll stop myself there.
Okay. Golden Eyed Leaf Frog scored 24.
Ooh.
Next is Good Day Sunshine, critique from Patty Gutschel.
Okay, I feel this image is just a little too contrasty for me. I would like to see the rocks in the front, toned down a little bit, burned down. And I would like to see a little more depth of field, because I love what's going on in the background. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that reflection in the water and whatnot. But it's not going to happen. So I was thinking if you could tone that down, like the rock up in the left corner, it's bright. My eye always goes to the brightest thing, and that's very bright. Bring that down so we can at least bring our attention to the green grass. It has a nice lead line from the left corner of the rocks leading up to the grass, and that's lovely. And it's nice the way that the rocks in the background form a continuous repetition, so it makes like a border around them and down to the rocks on the side. I just kind of felt like maybe just a little narrower depth of field would be really nice on this. It's nice and sharp though.
Okay, thank you. Good Day Sunshine scored 16.
The next image is Island Fox, critique from Alex Nye. Oops, sorry, Krista, from Krista Dix.
So this image could have been super interesting. I feel like it misses on a couple of points in that there's not a lot of separation from the background for this. The animal is so textured next to the bark that's on the ground. I'm not sure that we're getting everything out of the pose. I'm wondering if there was a shot on either side that might have been more active, or am I missing something? I wish there had just been a little bit more out of it, but it certainly is, the animal certainly is sharp. So I know that there was some intent there. I just wish there was some sort of animation to the scene itself.
Okay, thank you. Island Fox scored 18.
Next is Macro Wildflower. This one is Alex Nye.
Okay, so lovely for a macro flower shot, definitely. This is a pretty classic, you know, kind of, oh, sorry about that. You know, very pleasant, soft focus. I think two things to me could improve this, just to get right to the point. So one is the focal point, oddly enough, I mean, I don't know, maybe some people might like this, but the fact that it's between all the flowers, it's sort of the gap, that dark gap in between. And that's like the sharpest and the, you know, where your eye goes to, where it's kind of the opposite of what you think. Usually you'd think there'd be a flower, you know, one main flower in the middle of the assembly. Again, some people might like that, that might be on purpose, but to me, it felt a little unintentional. The second thing is in regards to color theory. So there's a lot of orange spill happening in the background, and this pink, you know, this pinkish magenta and orange are kind of close to each other on the color wheel, and it's sort of a strange combination. Now, there's never, you know, actual rules. There's just kind of theory. That's why it's called color theory. But what I think would be more powerful is finding the complementary, if possible. You know, I don't know if that was a real background or if it was, you know, manipulated in post, but toning that more towards a green in that direction might feel more harmonious. So it's more complementary colored with these pink flowers. So those are the two things that stood out to me.
Okay, thank you. Macro Wildflower scored 19.
Next is Moody Mountain, critiqued by Patty Gutschall.
This image took me right back to the dark room with my 4x5 and looking at a negative and dodging and burning and looking for the zones, and I enjoyed that part. So I think it's flat. I think we need to bring some sharpness and some contrast into those hills. There's just no true blacks. We need some true blacks, and I think there's more information in those clouds that can be brought out too. So I think a lot of dodging and burning and some curves on this image, and you could really have an extremely successful image. So go in and bring down your whites and look for the detail in those clouds. Get some texture and contrast in that top ridge there, because they're so sharp. You've got them so sharp on that ridge, and bring that in. And then the bottom, you just got to get rid of that feeling of being gray. You want some black and whites in this image. And I think it's an excellent composition because it leads up, and I like the balance, nothing centered. So I would just go back and work this again. And I think you'd be really surprised at how much you can pull out of all these different areas.
All right, thank you. Moody Mountain scored 21.
Next is Morning Mood, and this one is critiqued by Krista Dix.
I love the softness of this. I love again, almost like a fairy landscape, like you really wanted to see something, you know, Sasquatch or anybody, you know, traipsing through there, right, to tell a story. It's nice and sharp. I love the fog in the back. You've got a lot of great detail from front to back. It really draws me into the center and gives me a little bit to play with on either side. I'd prefer that the tree in the upper right be either lighter or lessened. It just seems like a big block. I know it was trying to balance out with the foliage on the left-hand side and the rock, but I think you could live without it and still have a really interesting image there without tightening up that frame too much. But
Okay,
otherwise,
thank-
good job.
All right, thank you. Morning Mood scored a 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Off and Away, critiqued from Alex Nye.
So yeah, this is a really cool moment, really cool lighting. Very successful. I don't think it's quite a 9 in my book. There's just a couple minor things that could improve it, but it's up there. This was a high score for me. I think a few things. So the small little leaf poking in the corner, that really bothers me. I know you're not supposed to clone anything, but that's what I would do. Or you just crop in a little bit. That just kind of pulls it's so like beautifully simple and minimal, and then that just kind of disturbs your edges. So every photo I ever make, I do something that I call edge patrol and just kind of go around making sure there's not like awkward things barely sticking in the frame, because I feel like the edges, unless it's intentional, it just kind of pulls away. You want the eye to kind of gravitate towards the center and the subject and move around inside the frame. Regarding lighting, it's like there's something, I feel like I love the way the light catches the body and the top wing. I feel like I wish there was just like a little more distinction between the bird and the background, just a little tiny bit. And it actually looks like that was, that started to be done. It looks like there was a rough selection made, because I see like a little bit of haloing there along the edges. It looks like it might have brightened the bird up, which is totally cool in my book, but I don't know about Nat Geo's book. And yeah, maybe a little more catch light in the eye. Use a little local brush to just do a little bit of catch light so that eye glows. But beyond that, I mean, so much working about it. The motion, looking into the frame is really powerful. So to Chris's point, it's not dead center. It's kind of got this space to move into the frame. And then the soft depth of field, the bokeh in the background is really beautiful. And I like that we're seeing just enough to understand that it's green and there's flowers, but it's so blown out and focused that you can't see any detail, which I think is brings that much more attention to the subject. So really, really amazing capture here.
Okay, thank you. Off and Away scored 22.
Next image is Passion Flower. This one is critiqued by Patty Gutschel.
When I saw this flower, I had to Google other passion flowers because I had never photographed anything like this. And I did not see any flowers out there with these wonderful squiggly tips on them, so I thought, I don't know what that means in the stage of the flower, but I thought that was just absolutely made the flower for me. It is a little too sharp, over sharp, and over bright for me. The green center stamens that are coming out, those 3 on the top, I would love to see those highlights brought back down so it isn't quite as white, because this is nature category. But in a different category, even like taking this to the creative category and doing something with it, I think would be just absolutely fun. But I would bring that down for this category just a little bit. But I think, because I know these are very small, I believe, but it's a very unique flower compared to what anything I could find. Totally sharp, but I think just a little too sharp for me.
All right, thank you. Passion Flower scored 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Pink Lilies. This one is critiqued by Krista Dix.
So I look at this image and it feels like it was dropped on top of a soft background. There's something about it that just doesn't seem quite connected. it might be all one flower. I love a good stargazer, just like anybody else, and they are really beautiful. I'm just wondering, is this one particular bloom? I almost feel like it's been composited a little bit, which gives it a certain sense of unreality. But I mean, there's nice sharpness on the stamens. The color is good. There's a nice soft background, but I'm not sure that it fits the category of untouched by man hand thing. So
Okay. Get the idea. Thank you. Thank you. Pink Lilies scored 16.
Next, we have Rainbow Struck, critique from Alex Nye.
Oh man, this was so disappointing for me because as a thumbnail, I was thinking this was going to be a 9, 8, 9 easily. And then I opened it and it had to be like a 5 or something because unfortunately the focus was just totally missed. If we see the same thing as the important subject here, looks like maybe it was autofocus, just kind of grab these waves in the foreground, which is such a bummer because this is such a cool moment, just magical lighting, magical energy to it, the rainbow coming in. I don't know if that's a flare on the lens or if that was actually there in person, like you can see that with your eye, but either way, that's incredibly cool. But yeah, it's a miss. Unfortunately, the focus is just way too off. It would have been incredible. Also the little noisy there in the background in the shadows, but yeah, that's kind of all I can say, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
can I say something real quick? I
Sure.
really love the composition of this. I love the power and the energy that it captures and it harnesses. You know, I'm not looking at this to be a 40 by 60 on a wall, but maybe an 8 by 10 might hold up.
Yeah.
And really like engage the viewer in a way. I know that technically it's a little rough, but it really does capture a moment that we all wish we kind of were around to see. So congratulations to the photographer on just being there to witness that moment.
Absolutely.
And to do what they could to capture that. So I'd say it's a really sharp image. It's a really interesting image.
Okay, thank you. Rainbow Struck scored 20. That's 2-0.
Next, we have Red Rocks in Starlight, and the critique is from Patty Gutschall.
Oh, I love photographing the Milky Way. I've done it many, many, many times, and I love the Milky Way on this. But for the nature category, I find the rocks in the foreground not to feel real. It feels surreal, and it's over sharped for me. And I just love that Milky Way so much. I'm like, let the rocks go darker, let the foreground go darker, let that Milky Way just stand out, because I think it's done really well. You've got nice sharp, they're pretty sharp, you know, because it's hard to get those unless you've got a star tracker to get them perfect. It's very hard to get those stars like that. And you can see, if you look at the stars, you can see the time lapse that it was on this image. So it's very sharp. The rocks look beautiful. But I think if this is my image and I was working with this, I wouldn't put it in nature. I would put it into either open or creative. And since it feels so lightened on the rocks, take that and make it a little more surreal and tone down the city lights in the background a little bit. But I love the Milky Way. I just felt for nature, it was just a little too surreal for me.
Okay, thank you. Red Rocks in Starlight scored 22.
Next is Rocky Shore, Krista Dix doing the critique.
I love a good water image, and especially a long exposure. There's a certain softness to it. I'm not sure I'm 100% on the rock dead center. I know it draws us in, but I don't know that it draws us in far enough. It almost seems like a block to the back third of the image as opposed to taking us all the way through. So I think it was a great idea. I think it just needed a little bit more tension in the image.
Okay, thank you. Rocky Shore scored 19.
Next is Snow Day. This critique is from Alex Nye.
Another really awesome moment to capture. Very curious where this is, but seems like a rare thing to capture, you know, polar bear just running through its environment. I love the energy. I love the composition, you know, directionally. Again, going back to what's called look space. So the character has some room, some openness in the frame moving into it. I mean, obviously it is what it is. I mean, maybe I could give some suggestions that would have not apply to this no manipulation category, but if I could, I would say maybe even consider just mirroring the whole thing, because I feel like the left to right motion is just way more familiar to humans in what we see on a normal basis. You read from left to right, everything's so I think it's always a little off when I see something like charging from right to left. But then again, maybe that's a statement, you know, it's like we're making backwards progress. That could be, you know, an interpretation of that. So in that sense, it is really interesting. The objects in the background definitely throw me off a little bit. I mean, again, you don't really have much choice over that, but it's a little distracting to me. It's like not enough to know what it is. It looks like, you know, some fallen wood or stumps or something, but especially like the ones right in front of his face or her face, sorry, non-binary. And I don't know, if there were not retouching rules, I would say just get rid of those little, I'm pointing to it with my mouse, but you guys can't see that, those little objects there right in front of his face. But that's about it. Yeah, it's really, really powerful moment. I like the snow effect. I assume that's real snow. It starts to look like grain a little bit at the top, but maybe that's just all snow. So yeah, cool moment.
Is that the teacher? The guy reviewing the picture.
Okay, thank you. Snow Day scored 23.
And our next image is Spring Family Outing. Patty Getchell doing the critique.
I thought,
Patty?
yeah, the three of them together was, yeah, I'm okay. I thought the three of them together was charming, but I felt it was a little too bright. I'd like to bring the whites down and a little more texture in there, because look at all that fur in there. I think there's a lot to be found. To bring it down a little bit and bring maybe some clarity in there and sharpness.
That person who took the picture talking?
Hello?
We've got somebody making comments with the mic on. Can you double check if you're not a judge to turn off your microphone?
Sorry.
Whoops. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're okay now.
'Cause I got an iPhone on the screen, so I don't know what that was. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I would bring the whites down on the animals, because the rams, because I think there's a lot more texture and detail in the fur, and I wish they were both looking at us, but it's okay. But you've got two babies there. Wait, they're not calves, they're kids. Rams are kids anyway. But the I like the depth of field. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Depth of field is good. The composition is nice. I like the flowers. I like the way that they're brought in, and so that's what I would do, is just bring those down. And I think I like the placement, because it does give them some room to walk into, and nobody's eating a flower. So there you go.
Okay, thank you. Spring Family Outing scored 18.
The next image is Trumpeter Thermal Mist Takeoff. This critique is from Krista Dix.
I love this. Again, the center focus I'll give that a pass this time because there's something about the wings, there's something about the movement. I love the trail of water in the back, the rippling in the pond. It just seemed like a beautiful, rich image that I think the only other thing I would say is it's a little muddy. I'd like a richer black and maybe a little bit whiter white, because the only white I can see is like right on the tip of that wing. And to bring some of the contrast up might actually bring us a little bit more depth on those wings. But other than that, I thought it was beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Trumpeter Thermal Mist Takeoff scored 26. So for the nature category, we have 8 accepted images. The first one is Kara Kara Combat by John Stucknagel. Cliffs, Greg Smith. Golden-eyed leaf frog, Bill Hallier. Moody Mountain, Charlie Henry. Off and Away, Don Green. Red Rocks in Starlight, Ron Williams. Snow Day, Bob Rottenberg. And Trumpeter Thermal Mist Takeoff, Bruce Straits.
All right, that's the end of our accepted images, which moves us into the open category. And the first image is titled Aftermath, and the critique is from Alex Nye.
Okay, so I would love to read the artist statement behind this one. It's clearly, to me, is telling a story, and it's not gonna lie, seems a little bit creepy. That we're kind of smothering and covering this doll until it screams. So yeah, I'm curious to know the story behind it. There's definitely one. I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of judge it if I don't know the intention. But I mean, on a technical side, I like I don't want to call it triptych because it's 5. I don't know, what would you call that? Pentadick?
Yeah,
What do you call that?
that works.
Krista,
That works.
you probably know more than I would.
Call it a film strip.
There you go. But I'm not sure why the choice to make them smaller after the first one. I'd probably just kind of have it consistent and a little more even with the framing. I don't mind the background texture. It's a little, I mean, it's not a choice I would make, but I feel like for, the story and the subject matter, it feels to support it. It's sort of like a fabric or doll-like texture. So it kind of makes sense. And the red mood adds a lot of mood to it. So yeah, that's kind of all I can say at this point.
Can I say something?
Please.
I loved this. I studied it for quite a long time because the emotions and the bound hands and the one completely covered up and bound, and then the motion at the end. And these are different dolls. This is not the same doll because if you look at the
Okay.
eyes,
Yeah.
they're different. That I was totally intrigued by this. And a sleeping baby goes through so many phases and it's screaming by the end and you're ready to about shake it and break its head sometimes. So, I just
Yeah.
thought this was just, as a mother and having those days when the baby was driving you up a wall, I could really relate to this, but I thought it was done exceptionally well. I like the smaller images and the color tone too of the turquoise. I thought it was, it is different, but I love it.
Okay, so for opinion number 3,
Yay!
right? I mean,
Please.
what's an image but to be engaging and certainly
Exactly.
to ask us a lot of questions. I wasn't sure about this one. I thought it was interesting and it certainly was trying to tell me something. When I was reviewing it, I wasn't quite sure I was in the mood for that. But it did bring me back. I sat with it for a long time. The one thing that I would say compositionally is I would have probably made the image 1 a little bit smaller and brought up image number 4 whatever, the 5, right? The scream on the other side, I feel that there needs to be a push-pull for a little bit more tension. I think we could have played with the motion of the bound hands and such, but there needed to be a beginning and a stronger end to it. I think if you're going to have it like that. So that would be my only critique, is to really sort of play with the tension on both ends. It's curious to me why it was a horizontal and not a vertical. But again, we all clearly had something to say about this one. And so in that respect, it was a super successful image,
Yeah.
because we're all leaving with a question, and we'll all come back to it at some point.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
awesome.
thank you all. Aftermath scored 21.
Our next image is A Wash in Moonlight with a critique from Patty Getchell.
Okay, this is, it's very soft. It's very moody. I was a little distracted by the rocks or whatever it is it the hillside over on the right-hand side and the little white spot at the top. I thought, if you're going to do this, I think those should be removed. And then I'd give it just a little bit more punch. And then maybe as a large image, it would work well. But it's very interesting, very soft, and it worked for me in a soft way.
Okay, thank you. A Wash in Moonlight scored 18.
Next is Capitalist Paradise, critique from Krista Dix.
I thought this could be a great image, but you know what drove me crazy is that little tip. And I almost wish it had been squared off in a way that it just read cleanly, so that the horizon line followed all the way through. I know that we were, it seems like we were trying to keep it angled with the woman on the rope in a way, but that became more of a distraction than, to me. I missed the background. I missed the desire to be in that location, and kind of got lost by the block of the graffiti and the mural.
Okay, thank you. Capitalist Paradise scored 18.
This is Carrizo Dawn, critique by Alex Nye.
Absolutely beautiful location, beautiful colors, flowers. This, makes me want to go to this location for sure. Definitely a photographer's dream. So the question becomes, how can we optimize this photo and make it the best it can be? To me, there was a little too much attention given to the kind of left side of the valley here. What I want to see more of is on the right, where the valley kind of opens up and we've got other patches in the distance. I think that might be a stronger place to kind of frame, or at least, if not turn the camera to the right, maybe even zoom in slightly on that. And then the other thing was maybe even getting a little bit lower with the camera, so that these flowers in the foreground could just be a little bigger and more prominent. That way, I feel like there'd be a stronger sense of foreground, middle ground, background, if there was a bigger difference in how close they were to camera. Just find like a really nice patch and then just get low right in that. It would require some focus stacking, which is a technique I don't know if you guys have done, but maybe we can talk about it some other time. Yeah, that's kind of, I think the other thing that works really well is the color, the complementary colors, going back to that point. So the soft blue with the bright yellow. Although I think maybe I'm curious to crop in to that upper right there. I think that would make it a little more powerful for me.
Okay, thank you. Carrizo Dawn scored 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Come Slide With Me, the critique from Patty Getchell.
I just love this image. I've always loved a wide angle, this is in focus from right on the tip edge all the way through the whole entire image. And it's so unique. It's so different. And I just love the patterns of all these roofs and the colors. I think it balances really well. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, just that I really loved it.
Okay, thank you. Come Slide With Me scored 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Don't Come Any Closer. This critique is from Krista Dix.
There is nothing like seeing a good brown bear, and I'll tell you, that's a hard shot to get and still be alive. I had to zoom in. I'm not a pixel peeper, but I did have to see where those eyes were. With my previous life as a park ranger, I've seen those eyes many times and had to tell people to back the F up. And so this was I just love this. It took me all the way back to my park days, but it was just fun to look at. And you want to name it. It's just so cute and cuddly and dangerous all at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Don't Come Any Closer scored 23.
I have to say that it's this image. I'd like to talk to the photographer to answer the question, does the bear photographer poop in the woods? I know I would have.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, next is Fall in the Sierra. Alex Nye critiquing.
Yeah, this is fabulous. This another great example of complementary color contrast. So the blues against these yellows, just such a pleasing combination. And I think, the one thing, maybe if we're talking about improvements, the blue might be just a little oversaturated for my taste. So I think you could maybe dial that down and still have the effect of the blue being there. The other thing was in the sky. So, this is a case where you're definitely going to have the sky and the clouds much brighter because that's where the sun is. So you're going to need to do some kind of dodging and burning to get the exposures right. And I can tell there was an effort to do that with exposure brushes, maybe a gradient, towards the top there to bring down the exposure. But it feels like it might have, I don't know exactly what, it might have been taking a little bit too far with the exposure or something. Like it feels a little mushy now. I can't quite put a finger on it, but maybe it's that there's like it almost looks like stormy back there, which maybe it is, but it feels a little too punchy, a little too HDR in the clouds. But if besides that, if I'm going to cover up just that top edge, everything else looks really well processed. It's really just in the sky that feels like it could use a little bit more finesse to get it a little more sort of natural looking.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Fall in the Sierra scored 24.
Next is Fire Goddess, critique from Patty Gutschel.
This is a well done layered image. I like the composition. It works for me because to me it's like she's almost coming out of a flower of petals. The one thing is my eye goes to the brightest part of the image, and the brightest part of the image is the fire on the left. If you take and you cover that up and you look at the image without that bright, you see her so much better. Your eye focuses in and you see the detail of her face and her body. And so I would take those yellows and bring them down almost to the yellow and down in the lower right corner. And by doing that, and then I would bring her up just a tad so that you can see her face more and the backside of her body. And then I think it would be just much stronger than what it is. But I like the textures, I like the layering, and I like the composition, and I like the model. You did a great job.
Okay, thank you. Fire Goddess scored 19.
Next is Golden Gate, critiqued by Krista Dix.
I had to look at this one for a while. The desaturatedness of this piece, I almost wish for a hint more red in the the line next to the chain link and also bringing up a touch on the bridge. A lot of it almost seems like a lot of HDR happening in this. I like the long exposure, the softness of the waves. I like the tack sharpness of the bridge. I mean, it's a great vantage point. I just feel like it didn't commit to one side or the other, whether it was a full color image or a fully desaturated image down into that black and white. I would have just loved to have a hair more color so that we could float in and out of the image in a more specific way.
Okay, thank you. Golden Gate scored 22.
Next is Lewis Falls, critique from Alex Nye.
So this location, I feel like, has so much potential. And I think there's a lot of things that could improve on this capture here. So the first thing I notice is this tree poking in from the right of the frame. To me, that's like not enough to be part of the story. It's just more of a distraction from this particular angle. What I want to see is push forward a little bit more and getting right up close to these like miniature icebergs here. So like right on the water level. It can still be framed at a similar focal length, you know, so we see the waterfall there, but just more foreground or more emphasis on the water there in the foreground. I think there's more interesting things happening there, and I feel like getting closer would benefit it. The other thing is, and maybe this is, you know, overdone these days, but I think what would make this way more impactful is an ND filter and a long exposure to get this waterfall just really silky smooth. And I think that would really kind of draw your eye towards it instead of just freezing everything, you know, which kind of feels uniform. It's a way of kind of highlighting your subject and adding a little more interest to it, which would also smooth out this water and the ripples in the foreground there. So everything would be a little softer. The last thing was the lighting in this scenario feels a little bit flat to me and inconsistent. And I think what may have happened is maybe it was an, you know, partially overcast sky, because I see shadows and sunlight on the right side of the frame, but then where our main subject is, it looks, you know, totally in shade. Which is unfortunate because that is the kind of the main subject of this photo, in my opinion, is the waterfall. And so, you know, maybe what that requires is just a slightly different time of day, which obviously takes some patience. So you can't just, you know, shoot the moment you're there. You'd have to kind of plan a little bit ahead or go back to the location. So those are the things that stood out to me. Long exposure, you know, better lighting on the waterfall, and a little bit closer to the water.
All right, thank you. Lewis Falls scored 18.
Next is Madonna in Waiting. The critique is from Patty Getchell.
You're muted.
You're muted. Patty, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
Talking away. Thank you. So when I first looked at this, I thought it was from a church or something. And then I saw the gas prices and I thought, this is really cool. Here she is, back of the truck, praying to the gods to please reduce our gas prices. And you've got the ray of light coming down on her. And there's so many things I would have like in my little, where I have to, you know, clean up everything. I don't think I would have done it to this one. I would just leave her just the way she is, because I thought it's a great story. And I love the texture and the sharpness and the detail of all her paint and her chipping and her face and the light on her face, just everything. I thought it was a fun image.
All right, thank you. Madonna in Waiting scored 17.
Next is Moonrise, Joshua Tree, California.
Ode to Ansel Adams, calling Ansel Adams. It's a nice shot. I like the panoramic nature of it. There's something about elongating that that makes it makes me actually look from edge to edge, following the line of the telephone poles and then being drawn up to that moon. I just thought it was a wonderful image to play in. So nice job.
Okay, thank you. Moonrise Joshua Tree, California scored 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Mumbai Laundry, critique from Alex Nye.
Bye. This is cool. This is an interesting capture, and I feel like it really tells a story. The vibrant colors are just amazing, and I know that's not, I mean, I can tell the saturation was boosted, maybe a little too much, but I know this subject matter is very colorful. So maybe you didn't need quite that much boost in saturation and might have just, done that on its own. The only other thing, the moment with the guy pinning up one of these shirts is great. Having that human in there makes a huge difference. If there was no person, I don't think it would be nearly as strong. The one thing that I think would improve this, as I was looking at it, is I would love to see more of the background. I start to see a little bit of a cityscape back there, and I think that might make this really interesting if we turned it into a vertical composition and showed, more of the context of where we are. So you start to understand, maybe how far we are from a city, or what it looks like outside of this village or something like that. I think it just kind of completes that whole story. And I think a vertical orientation would work really well for that. So maybe it just means stitching, a couple frames together or just rotating the camera. But yeah, so those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Mumbai Laundry scored 22.
Next is Pandemic Office, critique from Patty Gutschel.
I like the graphicness of this image, but I'm missing the pandemicness of it. I like the fact that the sides are straight up and down, and I don't mind the angled at the top and the bottom. Instead of being just straight on, it gives a little bit of a movement there. But I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. What is the brown piece there? Is that part of a door or what? So I didn't get the pandemicness of it, but I thought it was very sharp, very graphic, and that I liked. And I liked the softness of the colors. They're just being very simple and not a lot of color in there. So I think it would work as framed on the wall as a piece, but I just didn't get the pandemic part of it.
Okay, thank you. Pandemic Office scored 18.
Next is Proud Cock, critique from Krista Dix.
I need a minute. I try not to look at the titles because often the titles can be the death of an image. There's something about this image. I wish there was a dimensionality to it that is just missing for me. I feel like Monsieur was composited on top of that rock with behind that leaf. It might be just a contrast boost, but I wish there was a little bit more depth and a little bit more detail to the proud bird, as it were. But it could have been a really good image. Again, that portraiture piece of it being right in the center. I would have probably brought it in a little closer to enhance the bird maybe a little bit more if that was what you were going for the portrait itself. So almost.
Okay, thank you. Proud Cock scored 14.
Next is Quiet Before the Storm, critique Alex Nye.
Yeah, this is This is a really cool moment, really cool location. This is like one of my favorite lighting conditions to shoot in, when the sun is just barely peeking through the clouds somewhere. So, and it's somewhat behind camera. So your foreground is really well lit, but then your sky is really dark and moody and dramatic. That's an effect that I feel like a lot of landscape photographers try to simulate in their post-processing, and myself included, you know, vignettes in the sky and everything. But this is kind of a moment where that happened naturally, it seems like. The foreground is extremely sharp. You know, the leading lines of the bridge, or this footpath into the park here, you know, really draw your eye into the middle. Compositionally is great. The colors, the orange of the foreground versus that subtle blue of the sky. It does seem like the sky might have been darkened a little bit more, which I don't think I have a problem with. I mean, to me, what throws me off as a more technical photographer is evidence of your post-production. So to me, that's the most important thing when it comes to post, is like, you know, I don't care how much something is manipulated as long as I can't tell that it's manipulated, if that makes sense. So basically like cleaning up your masking, stuff like that. I mean, I'd have to look up close. It looks like pretty clean though, whatever, if it was done. I know on some examples you get a halo along the horizon from darkening something, and that it's hard for me to look past, but this did it really well. So well done on this photo.
Okay, thank you. Quiet Before the Storm scored 19.
Next is Speed, critique from Patty Gutschel.
We've seen a lot of this artist's work, and I'm always amazed by each one being so different and so unique. This one, I just love the reflection that we're seeing as this train going by, and the clouds and the storm, and the way the leading line takes you right there. It's just a perfect balance, sharp and tack as you want it to be. You look down there under the train and you see the gravel is just so sharp, but I just love the reflection and being able to see that the way that it came out. And what can I say? I like this one a lot. Out of even of the ones I've seen before, I like this one a lot over the others.
Okay, thank you. Speed scored 25.
Next is Stilt and Reflection, and critiqued by Krista Dix.
I like this image. It was interesting to me. There's the couple of things that were driving me a little crazy were the grass is in the foreground. I almost feel like it should have just been clean with the bird and the reflection. And I know that's almost impossible with those grasses, but the color was lovely and soft. The contrast of the beak against the softness of that pink and purple was, I think, really nice and a great idea. I don't know how you would have cleaned up the foreground. So, I think that all in all, it was a great capture.
Okay, thank you. Stilt and Reflection scored 19.
Next is Sweet Treat. This is critiqued by Alex Nye.
So this sort of looks like a snapshot to me. I mean that, I don't want to sound harsh, but it kind of looks like it was on an iPhone or something, which nothing wrong with shooting on an iPhone, but it just feels like, I don't know what the intention was. I mean, the only thing I can think of is like product photography, right? So I try to think of all this stuff. What's the real world application? You know, why would an image like this be, captured or used in the real world, or someone hired to do something like this? And so that's kind of how I see it, is, you're featuring this product, which is a good start. But I think some things could improve it. I don't see it necessary to show this entire shadow. I'd probably kind of isolate the candy more. The bokeh is almost there, but I think, having the face of it more, or the middle of it maybe more in focus and have it fall off. And then maybe also just a more interesting or textured background might help, just to kind of show off the product instead of just the white paper. But if you are going to use white, which is, if we're looking at it from that angle as this is product photography, it's not uncommon to have, pure white backgrounds to let the item really shine. And if that was the case, then I would probably just make a selective selection of the background and desaturate a little bit, just make it more pure white, where right now we're kind of seeing this blue, magenta, orange tints kind of all around, this kind of mixture of color contamination happening. So yeah, those would be my suggestions if that's the kind of angle you're taking this.
Okay, thank you. Sweet Treat scored 18.
Next is Three Markers. The critique is from Patty Gutschel.
For black and white, I love the clouds and the texture and detail in there, but I'm just so distracted by these white lights. I know it's about the three markers, but my eye just is drawn into this middle one, and it doesn't want to, it's always a constant fight to enjoy the whole entire image. So I'd want to see maybe more of a balance, to maybe bring the blacks up a little so there's a little more detail or something, so that my eye could rest a little bit easier. And all the black on the top I thought was just too much black up there. I would crop that out and do it differently. But I really am I'm being very challenged by the brightness of the middle center marker.
Okay, thank you. Three Markers scored 17.
Next is Watching, critique from Krista Dix.
Well, from one jumping cat to another. I love this. Thought it was engaging. I love the mystery of it. I love the idea that you have to look, and the outline of the cat is so beautifully done, yet it still blends into the background. I thought the balance was great. The color is good. Just a really sharp image.
Okay, thank you. Watching scored 24.
Next is When You Need a Big Eraser. The critique is from Alex Nye.
So I don't have much to say about the subject matter itself, because I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's clearly a sculpture, so you're capturing art. But I guess my only thoughts and comments will be more about the processing. So first thing to me is it feels a little bit flat, especially on the sculpture itself. And I think there's a few ways you can improve that. And I think the reason that happened is because the sky was probably, much brighter than the foreground, than your subject. And what it seems like is happening, and I could be wrong, but it seems like there's a pretty strong gradient brush, decreasing the exposure, right about halfway up, right where you see these blue tentacles, sprawling out. And as I mentioned before, that's a fine strategy, and it's a good strategy. But the problem here is that it's affecting more than you want it to. And that's what you need to be careful of, and what's really challenging about, processing for the sky. Typically, or before, a few years ago, I would have said the best way is Photoshop, and to make a selection of the sky, brush in a darker version of that sky, so you're not affecting both the tree, because you can see the tree is also getting darker towards the top of it. But now Lightroom's actually introduced some really powerful tools to finesse and make a selection even better and more precise. And I don't know if you guys have played with this. Maybe we can, do a lesson on it sometime. But basically, it has tools that allow you to just specifically select the sky. And I think that's one thing that stood out to me. And then that way you could do more local adjustments that maybe add a little bit of pop to the eraser itself, so it kind of shows up a little more. so that's processing. And I think the only other thing I'd say is the colors are nice. The fact that the eraser kind of matches those flowers down below, or those plants. I'm sure that was probably intentional by the landscape design team, but maybe not. So anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. When you need a big eraser scored 14.
Next is White Butterfly with Lavender, a critique from Patty Gutschel.
Wonderful. You've got your camera set nice and fast, so you can capture this butterfly so sharply, and the back wing still has movement. So I thought that was done extremely well. And I like the exposure overall on the plants, and I like the bokeh of the background, the separation. I would like to see a little more information in the butterfly to bring the whites down. I know the back wing doesn't look like it has much, but there might be some more there. That's about the only thing I would do, is try to bring in some more information into that butterfly. But it's a nice composition. I'm not a fan of putting frames around your pictures. I don't think they need them. I think they're a little bit distracting in competition, but I know a lot of people like to do that. So, and if you're going to do that, I would pick a color around your frame to match, so you're not distracted to the white border away from the image.
Okay, thank you. White Butterfly with Lavender scored 17.
Next is Young Wheat, critique from Krista Dix.
I like this image overall. It reminded me of a Stephen Shore Day to Night image based on the color palette from right to left, that bright yellow to the darker blue. I almost feel like it's too saturated for me. There's something a little hyper real about it, but the composition is great. I love the rolling hills. There's a lot of nice detail in the background. It might be just a little too heavy. I almost maybe want a little bit more sky in there, but overall I thought it was a great image to look at. Just my nitpicking, tweaking.
Okay, thank you. Young Wheat scored 19. So for the open category, we have 7 accepted images. Aftermath, Judith Barrett. Don't Come Any Closer, Jeff Lipschitz. Fall in the Sierra, Ken Pfeiffer. Golden Gate, Greg Smith. Mumbai Laundry, Bill Hayer. Speed, Ron Williams. And Watching, Bob Rottenberg.
Okay, that's the end of the images in the open category. We have the people category next, and this was a special assignment in the people category to submit a portrait with a door or window as a frame. The first one is Broad View, critiqued by Alex Nye.
Okay. So, yeah, maybe my fellow judges can help me interpret, but I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at here. I didn't understand the door or framing element. I'm not sure if that's happening here. Kind of looks like we're at the rooftop of a building or something, double exposure with some girl. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. One thing I do notice that might help fit the category is it looks like we have window light coming in on our subject here. So we have the kind of Venetian blinds which is a nice, nice, moody, dramatic light. I'm not sure I understand like the message or kind of the intent with this one. The colors feel a little overkill, oversaturated. Yeah. Sorry, I wish I had more.
Okay. Thank you. Broadview scored 15.
Next image is Delilah with a critique from Patty Gutschall.
I thought that was a nice exposure on the subject. We have a door and another archway, but I don't feel like she's in the door, but we've included doors, and I thought the lighting was nice on her. I would have toned down the lighting in the background because once again, my eye goes to the brightest part, and so I would have brought that down to bring her in. I also like to do on pictures like this, I like to burn down my edges to bring in the attention to the subject, especially when it's a person, because we have this one edge on the right hand side where it's just this tiny little bit of brick that's almost distracting. If you take something and you cut it off a little bit, you see that you are drawn into her a little bit better. I like the light off the door. It's reflecting off of her. I think that's nice. The step leads you into her, and she's in a nice third standing there, and it's a great pose. So it was successful. I just, for the category, I guess she should have been in a doorway, but I'll take it for the door.
Okay, thank you. Delilah scored 19.
The next image is Finding One's Place with a critique from Krista Dix.
I like this. I love that it told a story that we didn't quite know what was happening. The light coming in from outside is lovely. The reflection or the shadow detail on the floor is good. I even like the slight angle of the piece so that there's a little bit of tension left to right. Overall, it seemed a successful image and met the category for me.
Okay, thank you. Finding One's Place scored 21.
Next is I See You, critique from Alex Nye.
So it seems to fit the theme, assuming it can be fake people. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at when I first saw this, but I think my interpretation of it is this is a piece of art. So it's someone's, piece on the wall. Maybe it's a gallery or some other space. And so I'll try to kind of critique it from that perspective, because going back to what I said before, I think, I'm always thinking about the real world application. And so, I know professional photographers who specialize in documenting artist work or museum work. So that's, a discipline within photography. And if, assuming that was kind of the goal, I would make a few comments based on that standpoint, which would be, well, for one, maybe framing up centered with it. It looks like we're just left of center, which, creates lines that don't match the top and bottom frame of the photo. So just really subtle, really simple thing that I think makes it overall more pleasing. The next thing was the highlight on the upper right corner. So that is obviously, nature is hard to control. So you might not have had much power, but in a perfect world, you could flag it, AKA throwing some fabric or diffusion up to block that out. And I think because right now it's unnecessary and it kind of distracts from the subject matter, kind of, draws your eye to the edge of the frame. And the last thing is the blue cast, the blue color cast. So that's, common anytime you're in open shade. So when you're outside during the day, but not direct sun, there's a lot of blue kind of reflecting around from the sky. So I actually have a Photoshop action all ready to go that I use on a lot of my images that basically just desaturates the blues, and I use that selectively. And so in this case, I'm kind of seeing blue around the edges of the frame and a little bit on the figure, which, you know, could be considered intentional, but in this case, I don't think it is. And I don't think that's true to the art. And in a case like when documenting art, you know, it's always good to have color accuracy and proportional accuracy and things like that. So yeah, those were my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I see you scored 16.
The next image is Kate at the window with a critique from Patty Gutschel.
I think this one nails it for the special category. It's a beautiful, beautiful portrait, and the lighting on her face is just wonderful, and the expression on her face as if she's looking at something in awe. And I love the way the sheer curtain has created this division of the four quadrants, but it's the edging right there is not in the center or anything. It just works so perfectly. I think this was a total hit it right on the mark for the special category, and you did it well.
Okay, thank you. Kate at the window scored 22.
Next, let's give Google a rest.
Love this.
Critique from Krista Dix.
Oh, see, I love this image. I thought it was fun. I thought it was quirky. I thought it was interesting. I got to tell myself all kinds of stories with this. I would be careful of your title. I can go into tirades, like I'll keep you here all night long about titles, but I would suggest that less is always more with titles. So that way we have a lot more that we can bring to the image. There's a lot of red happening. I almost want just a hair more of the body visible instead of blending into that red. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Okay, thank you. Let's give Google a rest scored 24.
Next is Pandemic Working Late. Critique from Alex Nye.
So I totally count this to fit the category. This guy is clearly in some kind of awning, doorway, window thing. So with that aside, I think in this case, the title helps me understand it a little bit. The fact that this is kind of a depiction of the pandemic. And I think that adds a lot of important context. And with that in mind, it really makes it much more interesting to me, because normally I would not really be a fan of your main subject being, you know, shoved way down in the corner. That would normally be kind of weird. But in this case, it's got such a powerful storytelling effect, because you just have this seemingly empty street and city. And, you know, this guy is just kind of on the outskirts, isolated, you know, probably by himself in his home, on his balcony, whatever. So it's a rare scenario where I feel like that framing, that composition actually supports the story. So that was really interesting to me. I didn't even notice until now, but the for rent sign is kind of interesting too, because that's another, you know, adds to the narrative of, you know, of COVID and the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, like if we're absolutely nitpicking, maybe, you know, these highlights from the street lights are just a little too hot. Like in a perfect scenario, it'd be awesome to recover a little bit of detail on those bricks there, but that's just nitpicking. From a storytelling and compositional standpoint, this is really, really cool image.
Okay, thank you. Pandemic Working Late scored 19.
Next is Peekaboo. Critique from Patty Gutschel.
Oh, I thought this was a cute image. I love the colors, the blue and green, and the depth of field behind the little girl. I don't think it, excuse me, met the window or door, but I guess maybe those are doors that she's in by the slide. So I think it was very enjoyable. I don't really have anything to suggest on this one, and maybe a little bit more of her hand would be about it, you know, to see that. But other than that, I think it's a cute little image, but I don't know about the door part.
Okay, Peekaboo scored 18.
Next is Room with a View, critique from Krista Dix.
Once again, I love the use of the shadow detail to tell the story. The vista is certainly engaging. I wanted to spend more time looking out the window with them. So that to me made it a successful image. Their shape and their engagement with what's going on outside, the weight balance of the image, compositionally, I just thought it was great. It gave us room to stand there with them. It gave us something to look at and to be part of. So good job.
Okay, thank you. Room with a View scored to 20. That's 2-0.
Next is Scenic Oaxaca, critique from Alex Nye.
So very similar to the last one. We've got a figure in a window with a silhouette, which I think is a strong kind of style. I love the silhouetted look. There's something this could definitely be improved, and I'm trying to put a finger on what exactly would help it. The first thing that comes to mind, and this is the architectural photographer coming out, is straightening up our lines. So would not really require much perspective correction, but just drawing in either Lightroom, Photoshop, whatever you prefer. Just kind of straightening out everything so the frame itself is perfectly square. And, just for those who don't know, basically matching, like if you look at the edge of the frame itself, the edge of the photo, and then kind of look over at the edge of the window, having those be parallel is not to everybody, but to me is like so important and so satisfying. Just that like nice, it's very tidy when that happens. And when it doesn't, it just feels like a little sloppy or a little unintentional. Now, obviously you can break that for creative reasons, but I don't think there's a purpose or a reason to in this case. So that would be my first suggestion, just kind of tidy that up, nice and square, great perspective. And then I think, the focus, I was torn on that. I feel like the focus is on the woman and not the background, whereas I feel like maybe it should be the other way around. I'm not totally sure like where to look, and maybe there needs to be more depth of field or something, but it seemed a little, also the overlap of the person in the background seemed a little cluttered. Like I wonder if the camera was a little bit lower and her and her phone was against the mountain range, might be a little more clear of an edge. So yeah, I think I love this style of image. I love the kind of looking through and having a silhouette as a subject, but I think there's just a few minor things that could improve it.
Okay, thank you. Scenic Oaxaca scored 18.
Next is The Lace Maker with the critique from Patty Gutschel.
I'm so glad I got this one. I really like this a lot. It's the exposure. She almost looks like a drawing to me. There's a sharpness and whatnot on her, and I know it's a photograph, but I get this feeling of being an etching. And there's so much detail and there's so much clutter, but it all works together. And at first I was like fighting between the archway above her with the Madonna in there back and forth, but I just think it's almost like her crown of her and all her work. I like the exposure of it. I like the composition. I like the lead line from the left going up. The door is in a nice position. There's texture and detail on the wall, and even in the shadows of the drape on the left side, there's texture and detail there. So I think it's a very successful image, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay, thank you. The Lace Maker scored 23.
Next is The Woman at 411, critique from Krista Dix.
I like this image. I have to admit, I have a bias on so much happening in like so many Cuba images. This may not be Cuba, but that's where my head goes for that. it fits the category. It's an interesting image. I love her face. It shows a lot of life in there. There's clearly something happening outside the frame, which I also really like. So, overall, it's a good image. I wish there was a little bit more color somehow to pull her out of that doorway. But that is, again, just a tweak on top of what would be a good solid image.
Okay, thank you. The woman at 411 scored 22.
Next image is Welcome to My Humble House, critique from Alex Nye.
This is a great portrait. I am not the most proficient portrait photographer, so yeah, I'm not the best at critiquing portraits, but the choice of black and white, I think, works really well. The lighting is fabulous, and I think that's what's really great about this particular challenge, or this category of people in doorways, is that it introduces some really interesting lighting scenarios. That I think it can be either backlit, like we saw before, and the subject is a silhouette, or the opposite, which is the background is very dark and then our subject is really well lit. And I think the fact that it's soft light helps a lot. Her expression is just really fabulous, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's it seems to fit the title that was placed on it. I think maybe, I'm not sure why it was cropped almost just to a square. I feel like vertical may have been the call, or if nothing else, I think the piece of fabric at the bottom, just give that a little bit more room, just so it's fully in the frame, would be nice. It just feels incomplete that it falls out of the frame there. But beyond that, really good capture. I love the mood, the lighting, and the expression there.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to My Humble House scored 23. So for the people category, we have 7 accepted images. Finding One's Place, Deb Gibson. Kate at the Window, Chris Seaton. Let's Give Google a Rest, Carrie Topliff. Room with a View, Bill Hallier.
Oh, hold on.
Whoops, we missed that one.
That is, where is it? This one? That's it.
Yes, I believe that's the one.
Okay, then that was Bill Hallier, and then we'll move through to,
The Lace Maker,
there we go.
Bill Banning. The Woman at 411, Bob Rottenberg. And Welcome to My Humble House, Jeff Lipschitz.
Okay. That brings us to our print category. So the first one is Beach Monster, and this is critiqued by Patty Gutschel.
This was my favorite of the prints. I just love this image, and I'm a fan of a rag type paper, so I love the paper that you chose to print on. The details in the rock are beautiful, but what I really love is this foreground of the formations that the water makes. When the tides come in and out, they leave such beautiful artwork. And your highlights on the water are just exceptional. It's not blown out. It has this silkiness to it. And I really thought this is a fun, very, very, very successful image and well printed.
Next image is Beyond. And Krista, this is for your critique.
Yeah, you can tell it's getting late. I love this image. I almost remember doing that myself and sort of put myself in the bird's place, just waiting for that wave to come in and wash over me. The print was well done. I thought that the color palette was good. Everything about it I just really enjoyed.
This next print was originally assigned to Alex, however, he wasn't able to see it. So I was able to get a hold of Patty to ask her to be ready for this. Krista, if you also have comments, you feel free to give them. This is Poipu Point.
I love black and whites. You know, the clouds are treated exceptionally well. You've got detail back there in the trees. In the white of the waves in the background there, this could have a little more detail in. Oh, wait, I take that back. I take that back. Because you've got the softness going all the way through the lighting. In the print, I'd like to see a little bit more detail in the rocks. The shadows are kind of falling down. The white driftwood in the print, I would like to see that toned down just a tad, but I do like the composition and I like the color of your sky too, because sometimes grays and whatnot in skies can get a little strange. What I thought was interesting is the clouds on the right are moving so fast, so because they're blurred too, just like the water is. So that shows you it had to be a very windy day. Anyway, very nice job. Krista, do you have anything to say about it?
The only thing I would say is to bring down the driftwood in the front. It was a super big distraction for me,
Right.
in comparison to the rest of the image. I wouldn't say, try to shoot around it because it exists in real time, but there's got to be a way to not make that quite so hot. So that we can actually, it becomes a block and a barrier to going into the rest of the image. So that's the only thing I would say is to bring that down to allow us to really sort of fall into the water and the skyline.
Okay, thank you. Poipu Point scored 20-0.
And the next one is St. Xavier's View. And Patty, this was yours.
Okay, this is just tack sharp from the foreground all the way through back to those mountains. Well done, nice exposure. You've got lots of detail in the building, and the white clouds they're in the background in the archway. Those are fine. I like the composition where you have the small going up, and I like the fact that they did not center the main arch with the cross. I think that was a good choice. So I can't think of anything else. It's tack sharp. I'm not a fan of this type of paper, but for your print, it came out so beautifully. When it's framed, people aren't holding it, so that doesn't matter. But different for people that haven't printed before. Different papers will give your image a completely different look. So sometimes it's fun to try them out on the different papers to see what you get. But I thought it was another very successful image. I think all the prints were really well done tonight.
Okay, thank you. St. Xavier's View scored 21.
We have an unscored video.
The Carpinteria Seal Sanctuary is a protected spot for harbor seals to birth their cubs. The stretch of shoreline located next to the old oil pier is closed to humans for 6 months each year, but spectators can watch the cubs from a viewing spot on the bluffs above. Docents keep watch to make sure the seals are undisturbed and provide information or answer questions from curious observers. About 100 adult seals give birth to their cubs along the shoreline each year, according to CarpinteriaCoast.com. Cubs can swim from birth and can dive underwater for a few minutes when they're only a couple of days old. According to NOAA, most harbor seals will spend their entire lives within 30 miles of where they were born. You'll find a map and more details on how to best view the Carpinteria Seal Sanctuary at santabarbarascenic.com.
I just want to say I really enjoy the videos that you've been doing. The two of you do such a great job. I love the shortness of them. They're always informative and they're always about something local that nobody else has done anything about. So I hope you will keep doing these because I really enjoy them.
Yeah, agreed. A very, very interesting video. Voiceover, very clean, great audio quality there. Music went along with it. Those are all positives. What would improve it? I don't know. I mean, one thing that you're probably not allowed to do, which is get, a little lower to the ground. Like everything is kind of looking from above. I understand that you're not allowed on the beach, so maybe that's impossible. But that was like one thought. It'd be cool to like see at their level somehow. But again, maybe that's not possible. And then very difficult to see on Zoom, as Bill mentioned, but when I watched before, it did look like parts of it are interlaced, which is before most digital cameras. There was like interlacing, and there's ways that you can de-interlace footage so that it doesn't have that. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's like the only thing that I think might help improve the visuals there.
I enjoyed the video. The only thing that was a distraction for me was the music. It was a little too poppy, I think. It could have been taken back just a hair so that we could have spent more time looking at the wildlife instead of listening to that beat in the background. But otherwise, I thought it was really well done.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks,
you,
everybody.
judges.
Thank you to our judges. And there's 24 people in the room right now, but we had a high of, I think there were 38 or 39 at the height of what was going on. And so another successful night, and not anything we just couldn't do this without the support of our judges, and one that's dying to get out of here and go to sleep. So thank you, Chris.
I was going to say good morning, everyone. The judges did a wonderful job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill,
Thanks so
could you
much, everybody, for having me. Nice
Could
to
you-
see
can you
everybody.
hang out for a minute, Bill?
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.